In the bustling and noisy city of Lagos, where everyone is rushing through their own lives, a small act of kindness can change the course of a destiny, just like how a poor girl's life was transformed with nothing but a smile and a kind heart. Her name was Lucy. Lucy had no family, no one to rely on. She was an orphan, a child left to walk a difficult path that life had laid out for her. After the tragic death of her parents in a car accident, Lucy had to face a life full of challenges and hardships. She lived in a small, cramped room with no windows, its cracked walls the only companions she had. Whenever it rained, water seeped through the cracks and dripped onto the floor, slowly filling containers she placed around the room to catch the rain. This miserable and lonely feeling became a part of Lucy's everyday life. However, she would not let herself be defeated by adversity. Lucy's life was not like anyone else's. For her, every day was a struggle for survival. Working at a supermarket in the city was far from her dream job, but it was the only way she could afford to live. Lucy was a janitor, a job that no one else in the supermarket wanted. Every day she cleaned the aisles, wiped down the shelves, and helped customers when they needed it. Although the work wasn't glamorous, Lucy always performed her tasks with dedication and care. She took pride in doing every job, no matter how small, to the best of her ability. She knew that every task she did not only helped keep the supermarket clean, but also earned her enough money to maintain her modest life in her dingy little room. These were tough days for Lucy. She often couldn't afford the things she needed, from clothes to food. Every morning before heading to work, her breakfast was simple sometimes, just a slice of bread or a cup of milk. Despite the hardships, Lucy never gave up. She refused to let herself fall into despair. When starting a new day, she always smiled, even if it was only a faint smile. It was her way of reminding herself that life wasn't always easy, but she had to keep going. Lucy had once dreamed of becoming a doctor. She wanted to help people like herself, to be someone who could save lives and bring hope to those in need. But that dream was shattered when her parents passed away. She couldn't afford to continue her studies at university, and with no financial support, her aspirations came to an abrupt halt. Every night, sitting alone in her empty room, she would think back to the happy days with her parents, and tears would fall. But even then, she didn't let sadness consume her. Lucy understood that life must go on, and she could only change her fate by refusing to give up. As Lucy's life continued to revolve around long, exhausting days at the supermarket, little did she know that a big change was coming. Each day she went about her cleaning duties in the bustling supermarket in Lagos, a city that never slept, where people were always in a hurry and had little time to care for one another. Lucy became an indispensable part of that busy landscape. She cleaned the shelves, swept the aisles, and never let her personal struggles affect her work. She wasn't just a janitor. She was also the person always willing to help customers, whether it was a simple greeting or guiding them to find the items they needed. One afternoon, as the supermarket began to empty out, an elderly woman walked in. She wore an old dress, its color faded with time, but what stood out the most were the weariness and loneliness in her eyes. Her white hair was neatly tied up, yet it was clear she had lived through many hardships. Her steps were slow but steady, as if some hidden strength was pushing her forward despite her age and the deep wrinkles on her face. Lucy noticed her entering and immediately greeted her with a gentle smile. Every day she faced cold, indifferent glances from the hurried customers passing by, but she always made an effort to keep her smile as a sign of warmth. The woman, Mrs. Agnes, smiled back in return. She walked straight to the oil section, picked up a small bottle of oil, and made her way to the checkout. As she placed the oil bottle on the counter, Lucy noticed that the woman's gaze wasn't just unfamiliar, but there was a sense of confusion, of uncertainty in her eyes. Lucy continued her work, but when she glanced over, she saw Mrs. Agnes rummaging through her handbag, pulling out an old worn wallet. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the small change inside, seemingly trying to find enough money to pay. "I'm sorry, dear. I seem to have forgotten my purse." Mrs. Agnes whispered, her voice weak as if she didn't want anyone to hear. Her face flushed with embarrassment, and her hands shakily placed the bottle of oil back on the counter. The cashier, without a word, glanced at her coldly, waving her away. "If you don't have the money, don't stand here. This isn't a charity." The cashier said, her voice impatient, even contemptuous. Mrs. Agnes lowered her gaze, a tear slipping down her cheek. The The cashier didn't even seem to notice, continuing with her work as the line of customers grew. Mrs. Agnes stood alone, unnoticed and uncared for in the midst of the bustling crowd. No one paid attention to her pain or the embarrassment she was enduring. At that moment, Lucy saw the scene unfold from across the room. She could feel the sadness in Mrs. Agnes's eyes and couldn't stand by and do nothing. Without hesitation, she walked up to the counter and interrupted the cashier. "I'll pay for her," Lucy said softly but firmly. She turned to Mrs. Agnes, offering her a reassuring smile and saying, "Don't worry, you don't need to worry about this." The sight left Mrs. Agnes stunned. She looked up, her eyes filled with tears, unable to believe what she had just heard. Lucy opened her purse, took out a bill, and handed it to the cashier. The cashier looked at Lucy and then at Mrs. Agnes, a little surprised but saying nothing. "You don't need to worry about the change. Keep it," Lucy said to the cashier before turning back to Mrs. Agnes. Mrs. Agnes stood there, her eyes still filled with tears, looking at Lucy with a gaze full of gratitude and appreciation. She could not say anything except two words. "Thank you, dear. Thank you so much." From that moment, Mrs. Agnes seemed lighter, as if the weight in her heart had lifted a little. Her steps seemed a bit more graceful, as though the sadness had been eased even just a little by the kindness of a stranger. Mrs. Agnes, a wealthy and powerful woman, lived in a luxurious mansion but lacked joy in her life. Since the death of her husband, she had fallen into loneliness, with no source of comfort or encouragement from anyone. Despite her vast fortune and high social status, she always felt an emptiness in her soul. Her only son Felix was the sole heir to her vast estate, but he also lived in his own world, one consumed by career and power. His life revolved around business deals, meetings in boardrooms where money and influence were the only measures of success. Mrs. Agnes shared with Felix the story of Lucy, a poor girl who had helped her during a difficult moment at the supermarket, and Felix couldn't help but be moved. Although he had everything at his disposal, power, wealth, and reputation, Felix felt that his life lacked something very important, a real connection with the people around him. His life revolved around contracts, business decisions, and meetings where money and power were the only standards of success. But the story of Lucy made him begin to question himself and what he had been seeking in life. Suddenly, Felix realized that Lucy, despite her tough life and humble job as a janitor at the supermarket, possessed a virtue he had never seen in the people of his world. Felix's world had always been one where everything was measured by money and power, where kindness was sometimes overlooked. But Lucy was different. She lived for human values, not for personal gain, and that made Felix take notice. Determined to understand more about this girl, Felix decided to find a way to meet Lucy. He didn't want to hear about her from his mother. He wanted to assess and get to know the person Mrs. Agnes had described with such deep emotion. However, Felix was not one to be drawn to people from lower social ranks, but his curiosity about Lucy made him step out of his comfort zone. Felix started visiting the supermarket where Lucy worked, not as the CEO of a large corporation, but as an ordinary customer. Every time he entered the store, he watched her from a distance. Lucy always worked diligently with a gentle smile on her face, despite the fact that her job was to clean the shelves, sweep the aisles, and assist customers with their shopping. No complaints, no sign of fatigue showed in her demeanor. Every time he saw her work, Felix felt a strange sensation in his heart, as if there was something extraordinary about her that he had never felt before. That feeling became even more evident when Felix noticed that despite her difficult life, Lucy lacked neither dignity nor integrity. She didn't work merely for money, she worked because she believed in the value of helping others. She treated everyone well, from customers to colleagues, never once acting arrogantly or allowing her hardships to defeat her. One day, Felix decided to approach Lucy, but not as a man of power. He wanted to understand the girl his mother had spoken of. Felix walked up to Lucy's counter and began, "Thank you for helping my mother the other day. She told me about you and your actions really impressed me." Lucy looked up at Felix, not surprised, just offering a gentle smile. "It's nothing, sir. I just do what I think is right." Lucy's response, though simple, carried a great strength that made Felix feel a deep sense of respect for her. Felix stood quietly for a moment, feeling the vast difference between himself and Lucy. With all his power and wealth, he had never been able to treat people naturally and sincerely like she did. From that moment, Felix realized that his life was lacking true values. He had spent his life chasing fame and money, but had never known that true happiness lay elsewhere. As time went by, Felix grew more and more connected to Lucy. He began to realize that love and kindness were not things that could be bought, but values that people had to build for themselves. He understood that Lucy was the one who had opened his eyes to a world he had never been aware of, a world where small, kind actions could change someone's life. One day, as Lucy was cleaning an area in the supermarket, she accidentally noticed something unusual. While tidying up near the checkout counter, she saw a familiar saleswoman engaging with a customer. However, instead of charging the customer the listed price, the saleswoman was charging more than the actual cost of the item. This wasn't a one-time occurrence. It had become a habit. Lucy noticed that the saleswoman frequently did this, especially with customers who were distracted or didn't know the correct price of the product. As a janitor, Lucy had no authority to intervene directly in the supermarket's transactions. However, the unfairness and dishonesty of the situation made it impossible for her to ignore. Lucy felt a rising anger as she thought of the innocent customers being deceived because of their lack of knowledge. She knew this could not continue, and if no one spoke up, many others would be hurt by these fraudulent actions. Although she knew this was not her job, Lucy couldn't stand by. She decided to find a way to report the incident to someone in authority, but how could she prove the fraud without being seen as an unreasonable whistleblower? She began gathering small pieces of evidence, recording the times and transactions she witnessed. Whenever she had the chance, Lucy observed the saleswoman's transactions, closely ensuring that the dishonest behavior wasn't just an isolated incident. A week later, Lucy decided to share her findings with Felix, Mrs. Agnes's son. Felix, the CEO of a large corporation, had extensive connections and the ability to influence the supermarket's management. Although Lucy was initially hesitant, she knew that only Felix with his influence could help her expose the truth. She didn't want to handle this alone, as, without concrete evidence, she might be dismissed as a baseless accuser. Felix, after hearing Lucy's account, was deeply impressed by her courage and determination. He was not only a man of power, but also someone with a sense of responsibility to protect fairness. Felix decided to help Lucy and began gathering information from various sources. He investigated the supermarket's transactions, checked receipts, and examined the questionable sales records. After some time, they both discovered that this was not just one employee's act of dishonesty, but a scheme involving several people at the supermarket who had been taking advantage of customers to pocket the extra money. Feeling that the matter was clear, Felix and Lucy decided to expose the fraud. They reported it to the supermarket's management and provided evidence of the illegal activities. After an investigation, the management confirmed that the group of employees had exploited customers' ignorance by charging them higher prices and pocketing the difference. These employees had deceived not only the customers, but also other people within the supermarket, compromising the business's transparency and fairness. As a result, the fraudulent employees were fired, and the supermarket underwent a revamp of its sales process. To protect customers' rights and maintain public trust, the supermarket implemented stricter management measures and increased employee training on professional ethics. Lucy and Felix's actions marked a crucial turning point not only in their careers, but also in the lives of the customers who had been deceived. They felt that justice had been served, and those who had been harmed finally received fairness. Lucy's brave actions not only helped her expose the fraud, but also opened up new opportunities for her. She proved that no matter how humble the job, anyone can make a change if they have the resilience and determination. Meanwhile, Felix also realized that sometimes the most important lessons in life don't come from earning money or power, but from protecting human values, fighting for fairness, and spreading kindness. After witnessing Lucy's admirable actions and kindness, Mrs. Agnes felt a profound change within herself. Throughout the years she had spent living alone after her late husband passed away, she had stopped believing in the sincerity of people. She had lived in a world where everything was calculated, where every relationship was influenced by money and power. But Lucy, the poor janitor at the supermarket, made her see life differently. She had never encountered a young person who could live with such selfless goodness, expecting nothing in return. Surely Lucy was a rare soul in a world full of calculation. Mrs. Agnes couldn't forget Lucy's gentle smile, the way she helped her without expecting anything in return. This act not only warmed her heart, but also made her realize the absence of genuine human connection in her own life. Although she could easily offer material help to others, the selfless giving from the heart like Lucy's was something Mrs. Agnes had not experienced in years. The next day, Mrs. Agnes decided to return to the supermarket to find Lucy. She knew that this girl deserved not just help, but also a chance to change her life. She couldn't let Lucy continue to live in poverty. Mrs. Agnes walked straight to the counter where Lucy usually worked. Lucy was cleaning her face, still smiling, maintaining a friendly attitude towards all customers, even though there was no doubt that she was tired inside. Mrs. Agnes walked up to her and gently patted her shoulder. "You have a beautiful heart, Lucy." Mrs. Agnes began, her voice warm but filled with emotion. "I can't let you live like this. You deserve a better life. Let me help you." Lucy looked up surprised to see Mrs. Agnes coming to find her. She said nothing, just smiled faintly as if to say thank you. But Mrs. Agnes continued, "You helped me without expecting anything. That touched me deeply. I want to help you go back to school, to help you become the person you've always dreamed of." Those words left Lucy feeling conflicted. She had never imagined that one day she would receive help from anyone, especially from someone she had just met. Lucy had always told herself that she had to do everything on her own, to stand firm and carve out her own path. Mrs. Agnes's offer, though, made with kindness, made her feel a little uneasy. She feared that if she accepted this help, she would no longer be able to stand on her own. "Thank you very much for your kindness, but I can't accept your help just like that," Lucy replied, her voice soft but firm. "I want to overcome this challenge on my own, to work hard to achieve what I truly deserve." Mrs. Agnes looked into Lucy's eyes, not with anger or sadness, but with admiration for the resilience she saw there. She understood that Lucy was someone who didn't want to depend on anyone, and this only made Mrs. Agnes respect her even more. However, Mrs. Agnes did not give up on her intention to help Lucy. She knew the best way to help was to create an opportunity for Lucy to stand on her own feet. With this resolve, Mrs. Agnes offered another suggestion. "Would you like to go back to school? I can help with your tuition so you can continue your education and pursue your dream of becoming a doctor. I believe you can do it, and I want to help you make it happen." Upon hearing Mrs. Agnes's offer, Lucy felt a mix of emotions. She had always dreamed of studying medicine, but her circumstances and lack of financial resources had stopped that dream. However, accepting Mrs. Agnes's help was not simple for Lucy. She didn't want to become a burden to anyone, but at the same time, she couldn't ignore the only opportunity life had offered her. After thinking it over for some time, Lucy finally decided to accept Mrs. Agnes's help. However, she insisted that Mrs. Agnes only assist with her tuition and related educational expenses, and she would support herself through her own work. She didn't want anyone to think she was relying on others to achieve her dream. Mrs. Agnes was overjoyed when she heard Lucy's decision to accept her help. She understood that assisting someone wasn't just about giving money, it was about offering them an opportunity to stand on their own and prove themselves. Mrs. Agnes didn't expect anything in return. She simply wanted Lucy to have the chance to achieve her dreams. With Mrs. Agnes's help, Lucy embarked on a new journey. She re-enrolled in school and began preparing for the medical entrance exams. Though her work remained challenging, Lucy now had hope for the future and a strong desire to learn. After years of relentless effort, Lucy finally achieved the dream she had held on to since she was a little girl. Born into poverty, Lucy's life was never easy. However, she never allowed adversity to defeat her. Despite the hardships, she held on to her belief in herself and her determination to pursue her dream of becoming a doctor, to help the poor mothers and children in need. The road ahead was filled with challenges, but with resilience, Lucy overcame every obstacle and turned her dream into reality. She worked tirelessly, studied diligently, and sacrificed many things to achieve her goal. Long nights spent with textbooks, staying up late after a full day of cleaning at the supermarket could not make Lucy falter. She understood that only through learning and hard work could she escape poverty and help others who were struggling like herself. Many times she had to self-study, search for materials online, do assignments, and prepare for exams with no one to guide her. Even though she had no family support, every time she thought about the people she wanted to help, especially poor mothers and children, it gave her more motivation. Her college years were a huge challenge. She had once thought she would never have the chance to return to school, but with Mrs. Agnes's help and her own determination, she regained her belief and continued her studies. However, the most difficult part was the unforeseen hardships she faced. She had to work hard to make a living and cover her tuition expenses. She also had to face stressful exams and exhausting study hours. But the most important thing was that Lucy never grew tired of her dream. She understood that only through education could she change her life and help those less fortunate. Day by day, month by month, Lucy gradually emerged from the shell of poverty and grew into a strong, independent, and determined woman. After years of hard work, she received her medical degree, and even more importantly, she became a doctor, specializing in treating poor mothers and children, the very people she had always dreamed of helping. Every time she saw the smiles of the patients she saved, her heart swelled with happiness. This was the reason Lucy never gave up to change her life and bring hope to those who lacked the means for a better life. The most special part of Lucy's journey was her resilience and independence. She never relied on anyone, not even Felix, who had always supported and helped her along her career path. Though Felix was always ready to assist her, Lucy remained determined to achieve success on her own. She didn't want her life to depend on anyone's kindness. She only wanted to take control of her fate and her dreams. The years of fighting poverty had taught her that when a person knows what they want and pursues it with persistence, nothing is impossible. Throughout this journey, Felix had been a wonderful companion. He always respected Lucy's decisions, even when he wanted to help her more. What made Felix love Lucy was not just her strength, but also the integrity and self-respect she always upheld. When he saw her achieve her dream, Felix felt proud, not only because she was an excellent doctor, but also because she was a strong woman who never gave up no matter how many challenges she faced. After Lucy completed her studies, Felix couldn't wait any longer to express the feelings he had kept inside for so long. He loved her not just because of her appearance or the accomplishments she had achieved, but because she had taught him so many valuable lessons about life. She taught him how to love without selfish motives, how to live resiliently no matter the hardships. Felix loved Lucy for all these qualities, and he wanted to share his future with her. One afternoon, as they sat having coffee at a familiar cafe, Felix could no longer hold back his emotions. The months of accompanying Lucy had made him realize that his feelings for her went beyond respect or admiration. He had fallen in love with Lucy, the strength, the resilience, and the incredible qualities she displayed. Felix looked deeply into Lucy's eyes, his hand trembling slightly. But then he spoke with a sincere and emotional voice. "Lucy, you've achieved things that not many people can. You are someone I deeply admire. But there's one thing I haven't told you. I love you, Lucy. I love you not just because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you are, strong, resilient, and always willing to help others without expecting anything in return. I don't want to miss the chance to share the rest of my life with you." Lucy looked up at Felix, a bit of surprise crossing her face. She knew that the bond between them had been growing gradually through their conversations and shared moments, but she had never expected love to come so soon. She smiled softly and gently replied, "Felix, thank you for your heartfelt words. I truly care about you, but I need more time to think. I want to continue building my future and achieve everything through my own effort." Felix smiled and nodded with no pressure in his gaze. He respected Lucy's decision and knew that true love wasn't about coercion, but about freedom and mutual respect. "You need time, I understand. I'll wait for you, Lucy. No matter what, I'll always be by your side." This conversation wasn't just a confession of love. It was a deep understanding between the two of them. They weren't just in love with each other. They were companions, sharing dreams, goals, and life's challenges. Felix didn't rush Lucy. He only wished for her to find her own path. And when she was ready, he would always be there to build a beautiful future with her. The relationship between Lucy and Felix became a beautiful story of love and respect. Felix, despite his wealth and power, learned valuable lessons from Lucy about life. Love is not about dependence, but about respect and companionship in each person's unique journey. They had gone through challenges together, risen above them, and built a bright future where they were not just partners, but companions in both their careers and life. Finally, on a warm summer day, at a simple yet meaningful wedding, Lucy and Felix stepped into a new chapter of their lives. They weren't just a loving couple, but companions sharing their dreams and expectations for a promising future. Their story was a testament to the strength of resilience, true love, and belief in one's ability to change their life.